Good afternoon. Cathar Unconditional Love number 28. Gnostic, good and evil. Gnostic, good and evil. Why not just good and evil? Fair enough question. Well, from most societies in the world, we live in a dualistic world. We have good and evil, happiness and sadness, night and day, black and white, tall and short. This is the world. Happiness and sadness, joy and pain. This applies to all societies. The difference between East and West is that the West was influenced very much by Judaism, which had its God, a very wrathful God. If you did this, you're okay, and he looked after you, and if you sacrificed, but if you did the wrong thing, well, he was a destroyer, a very wrathful God, the God of the Old Testament. And then this influenced Christianity, early Christianity. You had this good and evil, this wrathful God, but then we had that tended to move towards the love, and there's very little of the wrathful God in the New Testament. It's more about loving your neighbour and so forth, as if God has got two different personalities, or there's two different gods, even within the one Bible. So, not that it particularly concerns me. I read it because it's interesting at times, but that's about as far as the Bible is concerned with me. And of course both Judaism and Christianity influenced the Muslim religion. In fact, some of Muhammad's followers were Christian, I believe. Two of his followers, I believe, his 12 followers, were Christian. He married a Jew, and possibly had a Jewess as a girlfriend, or he married her. The scholars debate on that. So they've got this, stemming from that, this God, wrathful God, goodness and evil, and they had to come up with something to balance it, and so they came up with Satan, God and the devil. And that's influenced other things, including Gnosticism, because you have Christian Gnostics, and they suddenly had this good God and the devil, and so this was also their dilemma. And so the way they looked at it was that we had the source, this great unknown, and that would have been a good God, love emanating from that God, but we had to do something with evil, so they made the breakaway divinity, or light, or demiurge, or artificer, whatever the name one wants to call it, that created the material world as we know it. And that's to the Gnostic, that's the God of the great faith this personal God that they pray to. So, but the Gnostics had him as the Rex Mundi, the God of the world, because they had this concept of evil. In the East, we also had in Taoism, we had Lao Tzu, who also said there's a source, there had to be something there, and from that everything evolved. But in their situation they had yin and yang, and again this duality, this night and day, tall and short, this opposites. But with them, the opposites, like night and day, as night receded, as day came into being, as day receded, night came into being. So this duality, the Eastern dualities, excuse me, they didn't attribute good or evil to these. They were just simply the way the world was, the way nature operated. And I think that's a far more realistic way, because they didn't have this problem with evil that they had to do something with. Now, just about everything that exists, it's not so much that that exists, it's how we look at it, our attitude towards it. For instance, there's a field. In the field, at the end of the field, there's a forest. If you walk through the field, you walk through the forest on a pleasant day, even if it's raining. Where's the goodness and where's the evil? It's simply a field being a field, the grass growing, birds flying. The forest is simply being a forest. The trees are growing, small trees, large trees. There's a meandering brook which will eventually go into a river. Where's the goodness? Where's the evil? Okay, I'm going to incorporate a little story. In this field that we have, simply a field being a field, there's no goodness and there's no evil. It's just nature being nature. There's no malevolence. Along comes two riders, a male and a female on a horse, both riding. As it turned out, they'd been a married couple on one day, in love, on the horse, and they're cantering pleasantly. And then they come to a small log, and his wife jumps over the log, no problem. But the male, his horse, shied to the side and nearly came off. And he said, "That's one." And anyhow, he got over the small log, kept going. Then they came to a very, very small stream. Again, her horse jumped over the stream. Again, his horse stopped and he nearly came off, and he had to push get the horse over the stream. And he said, "That's two." She's looking at him, but anyway, they stopped at the edge of the forest. Everything's fine. But anyway, while they're talking, his horse stood on his foot. He said, "That's three," with which he put his hand in his jacket, pulled out a 357 Magnum pistol, put it to the horse's head, and blew out its brains. His wife one day said, "You cruel, cruel man. If I knew you were like that, I never would have married you." He said, "That's one." Okay. It's a joke. I like my little jokes. But the point is, in that field, at the edge of the forest, it was simply a field, it's simply a forest. There's no goodness and there's no evil. He, with his threat to his wife, she, with her anger, brought in his negative aspects to the situation. So the point I'm getting at here is, in the world, in the cosmos, now, if you live on top of an earthquake area, there's a fault in San Francisco or in Japan, it's quite likely at some point in your life you're going to experience an earthquake. But it's nothing personal or malevolent towards you. There's nothing inherently evil about it. It's simply, that's the world. It gets to a certain point, it's got to drop and create an earthquake. That's just the way it is. So, is there evil or is there goodness? Of itself, I don't really think there is. There is, what I do believe is, there is an infinite capacity and vastness of goodness. There is an immense vastness of evil. But it is not there of itself. It's a person's capacity to create that much goodness, and it's a person's capacity that each of us has within us to create that much evil, and which people have done, depending on the circumstances. One image that I find very difficult to erase from my mind, didn't happen to me, but I was at that battle. And my friend, he was a sniper, and he had to actually check these oncoming, literally thousands of Chinese attacking. And he described to me one image that stuck in his mind, because people were being chopped down by machine guns, by artillery, etc., etc. In fact, a couple of thousand young Chinese lads died in that battle. And they were coming up a slope which was termed, the long slope which was termed Green Finger. But he said there was this guy, and he said, I can't work out, because he had no weapon. He just said he had his hands in front of him like this, and he was running until he just fell forward and presumably died. He said, I've never been able to work it out. I said, I'll tell you what it is. Did that person run through this cloud of white smoke? He said, yes, he did. And I said, what happened? He was hit with a phosphorus bomb, a shell, artillery shell. And what was actually happening to him was his flesh was being burnt and literally falling off his face, and he was holding it in his arms until he just collapsed and died. What a terrible way to go. Now, you can't stop phosphorus unless you, you put it under water. It just burns away the flesh. Now, some university-educated Western scientist devised those phosphorus grenades, those phosphorus bombs, those phosphorus artillery shells. They must know, because they know what phosphorus will do, the pain, the intensity of the pain that people are going to suffer before they die over this little this machine they're putting together. Possibly even the public has contributed in some way towards their education, which they now, and they have made this bomb, and of course they probably consider themselves a patriot because they're doing something to defend their country. This is where we humans have this infinite capacity for evil. Okay, this is evil on a large scale. There's a child. It's born. The child is born not knowing its father. We call that child illegitimate. And cultures right throughout the world have made life miserable, and the people around them in their town, their city, their village have made that child's life miserable merely because he's born illegitimate. Okay. Another story. There's 3 clergymen in the train, in this compartment, and they're travelling along. The only other person in the compartment is a 14-year-old girl, young 14-year-old girl, Western girl. Anyhow, one of the clergymen, they were chatting, and he stood up and he said, look, he said, this is not a confession. He said, but I was actually born illegitimate. He said, I never knew my father. And he said, but, he said, here I am, a clergyman. He said, I'm actually proud of the fact. I'm proud of the fact I was born illegitimate. And this was an Anglican clergyman, an Anglican minister. Next thing, this Catholic priest stood up and he said, well, he said, that's an amazing coincidence. He said, because I was born illegitimate too. And he said, it was terrible when I grew up. But he said, now, he said, I've come to grips with it. He said, I'm actually proud of the fact of my illegitimacy. Well, the third one got up and he's a rabbi. And he said, well, he said, I don't believe this. He said, yeah, the universe works in strange ways. He said, because I'm also illegitimate. He said, I was born illegitimate. And I'm proud of the fact as well. And they just, just so amazing. Anyhow, the 14-year-old girl, she happened to pull out a packet of cigarettes and she said, oh, by the way, she said, any of you 3 bastards got a lighter? Okay, it's a joke. But the terms we give an illegitimate child, who's got no control over the situation whatsoever. We don't have to make a phosphorus bomb to create evil. That person's there, we can bring up the subject of the person being illegitimate, tell it to another person, or just say, oh, he's a bastard, or whatever it happened. This is creating evil. There was no evil there until your mind got hold of your tongue and you made that statement, which is, for whatever reason, to elevate yourself, put down that person, hurt that person, or whatever. You then have just created evil. If by you thought that, but you kept your mouth shut, by doing that, you have created a piece of energy or goodness. So not from a Christian Gnostic's point of view, because Christianity and Gnosticism got together and they had this business of goodness and evil, God and Satan, that they had to deal with. But Gnosticism, pure Gnosticism, true Gnosticism, Gnosticism pure and sweet, it doesn't have this problem with goodness and evil. It is like the Chinese, it is simply there. It is our capacity that each of us have within us, that we can create goodness or we can create evil where it did not exist a minute before. Whatever we did, that it was that created it. So it's a viewpoint. It's my viewpoint. And it's also to try and take us away from muddied Gnosticism. Muddied through Christianity, or muddied through Islam, or muddied through Judaism. There is a Gnostic thing, there is a Gnostic philosophy, and it's a pure, sweet philosophy, happy ending, there's no need of salvation. We all are going to arrive ultimately, our divine spark, at the source. This is a very, very sweet philosophy. It's a very, very sweet philosophy to live by. And it means that we can enjoy our humanness. And by creating goodness, we can also transcend our lives. But each of us had this capacity for creating evil. This is within each of us. None of us are born saints and none of us are born devils. But we have the capacity for each within each of us. Another viewpoint. Bye for now. Talk to you again soon.